I am 29 years old. For 5 of those years, I was married to a man who loved his mother more than he loved me. I knew this, in a vague and distant way, from the very beginning. I just never understood how deep that loyalty ran, or what it would one day compel him to do. The pressure from my mother-in-law, Diane, was a constant, low hum in the background of our lives. It was in the way she would rearrange my spice rack every time she visited, putting everything in alphabetical order because, as she said, any civilized person would. It was in the backhanded compliments about my cooking, like, "This is surprisingly edible, Lena," followed by a tight smile. It was in the way she always called my husband Tom, my baby boy, even though he was a grown man of 32. Tom, for his part, was a master of avoidance. He would physically leave the room when she started in on me. He claimed it was to avoid making things worse, to not feed the fire, but I knew he was just afraid of her. He was afraid of her disappointment, her sharp tongue, her expertly wielded guilt. So I was left alone to handle her, to smile and nod and swallow the bitter pills of her disapproval. We had argued about it, of course, countless times. Each argument followed the same script. I would tell him I needed him to be on my side, to present a united front. He would say I was being too sensitive, that it was just her way. "She doesn't mean anything by it," he would insist, his eyes pleading with me to just let it go. And for the sake of peace, for the sake of the man I thought I loved, I usually did. But in the months leading up to that morning, the hum had grown into a roar. We had a major fight about money. I had received a small inheritance from my grandmother, and I wanted to use it to finally put a down payment on a house of our own, a place where Diane couldn't just show up unannounced with a key she had copied without my permission. Tom had other ideas. He wanted to invest it in his mother's failing antique business. "She just needs a little boost, Lena," he had argued. "We can buy a house anytime." When I refused, the atmosphere in our home turned arctic. Tom was sullen and distant. Diane's visits became more frequent, her criticisms more pointed. She spoke to me as if I were a naughty child, hoarding my toys and refusing to share. The pressure was immense. I felt like I was being squeezed from all sides, and I started to think that maybe I was the crazy one. Maybe I was being selfish. Then came the morning that changed everything. Diane had been staying with us for a week, a visit meant to help Tom through this difficult time, as she had put it. The air in our small apartment was thick with her perfume and my resentment. I woke up feeling a familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. I just wanted her to leave. I walked into the kitchen to find Tom standing at the counter, a strangely focused look on his face. He was grinding coffee beans, something he rarely did. He usually just used the pre-ground stuff. "Good morning," he said, his voice a little too cheerful. "I'm making a special brew for my 2 favorite girls." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Diane was already at the table, sitting in my chair, reading the newspaper as if she owned the place. She looked up and gave me a smug little smirk. "Isn't he just the best son?" she chirped. I forced a smile and said nothing. I just wanted my coffee. Tom poured the steaming liquid into 2 identical mugs, the ones I had bought on our honeymoon. They were a matching set, simple white ceramic with a single blue bird painted on the side. He always teased me about how much I loved them. He brought the mugs to the table on a small tray. He placed one in front of me and the other in front of his mother. "Here you go, Lena," he said, his hand shaking just slightly as he set it down. "And one for you, Mom." I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic, ready for that first sip of caffeine to cut through the fog of my unease. I lifted the mug to my face. And then I smelled it. It wasn't the rich, comforting aroma of coffee. Underneath that, there was something else. A sharp, chemical scent. It was bitter and almondy. My blood ran cold. I froze, the mug halfway to my lips. My mind raced, trying to place the smell. I had read about it somewhere a long time ago. A crime novel, maybe. Bitter almonds. It was the smell of cyanide. I lowered the mug slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. I looked at Tom. He was watching me, his expression a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. He quickly looked away when our eyes met, his face pale. I glanced at Diane. She was watching me too, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. She was waiting for me to drink it. In that one horrifying instant, everything became clear. The arguments, the gaslighting, the pressure about the inheritance. This wasn't just about control anymore. This was something else entirely. They were trying to get rid of me. A wave of cold, terrifying clarity washed over me. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to let them win. My mind worked faster than it ever had before. I needed to think. I needed a plan. But first, I needed to survive this moment. "Oh, shoot," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I stood up abruptly, jostling the table. I think I left the iron on. It was a clumsy excuse, but it was the first thing that came to mind. As I pushed my chair back, I let my hand accidentally knock against the small tray Tom had used. The tray tilted, and my mug slid precariously close to the edge. Diane's mug sat right next to it. In the split second that Tom and Diane were distracted by my sudden movement, I did it. With a swift, almost imperceptible flick of my wrist, I switched the mugs. My hand moved so fast, it was a blur. I nudged Diane's mug into my spot and pulled mine into hers. It was done. I then saved the tray, setting it right. "Silly me," I said with a light laugh that sounded foreign in my own ears. I sat back down. The two identical mugs sat on the table, their contents a secret between me and my husband. Only I knew which was which. I picked up the mug now in front of me, the one that had been intended for Diane. I took a small, cautious sniff. It smelled only of coffee. Rich, dark, and completely normal. I looked across the table at Diane. Her eyes were still on me, narrowed with suspicion. The smug smile was gone, replaced by a look of confusion. "Well, drink up," she said, her voice sharp. "You don't want your special coffee to get cold, do you?" She picked up her own mug, the one Tom had given me, the one that smelled of almonds. I held my breath. I watched her lift the mug to her lips. She took a long, deep gulp, her eyes never leaving mine, as if daring me to challenge her. I just sat there, my face a mask of polite neutrality. I waited. For a moment, nothing happened. Diane lowered her mug, a look of satisfaction spreading across her face. "See? Delicious," she said, though her voice seemed a bit strained. She took another sip. Then, her expression began to change. A flicker of confusion crossed her features. She blinked slowly, as if trying to clear her vision. I feel a bit dizzy," she murmured, putting a hand to her forehead. Tom, who had been watching this whole exchange with wide, terrified eyes, jumped to his feet. "Mom?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Are you all right?" Diane's speech started to slur. "Something's not right," she mumbled, her words thick and clumsy. Her head lolled to one side. She tried to take another sip of the coffee, but her hand was shaking so badly that the dark liquid sloshed over the rim, staining the white tablecloth. The smugness was completely gone from her face, replaced by pure, dawning panic. She looked from the mug to Tom, then to me. Her eyes were wide with a question she couldn't seem to voice. "What? What did you do?" She finally managed to get out, her words barely a whisper. I just looked at her, my expression unreadable. I didn't have to do anything. She had done this to herself. Tom rushed to her side, grabbing her arm. "Mom, what is it?" "What's wrong?" he cried, his voice shrill with fear. She slumped forward in her chair, her body suddenly going limp. The coffee mug slipped from her grasp and shattered on the floor, the dark liquid pooling around her feet. The bitter almond smell was stronger now, filling the small kitchen. There was no denying it. Tom stared at the broken mug, then at his unconscious mother, then at me. The color drained from his face. He knew. He knew what I had done. And he knew why. "What's happening?" he stammered, looking at me with pure terror in his eyes. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling surprisingly steady. I looked down at Diane, slumped over the table, and then back at my husband, the man who had just tried to poison me. "I think your mother is having a bad reaction to her coffee," I said, my voice cold and calm. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. "I'm calling an ambulance." Tom just stood there, frozen in shock and horror. He was a child who had been caught with his hand in the cookie jar, except this time the jar was filled with poison. As I dialed the emergency number, I met his gaze. In my eyes, he didn't see fear or panic. He saw a cold, hard resolve he had never seen before. The game had changed, and I was finally ready to play. The paramedics arrived with a sense of urgency that felt both surreal and completely appropriate. They moved with practiced efficiency, asking questions I couldn't fully answer, at least not truthfully. I told them what I saw. She was drinking her coffee. I explained, my voice carefully modulated to sound concerned, but not hysterical. She said she felt dizzy, and then she just collapsed. They loaded Diane onto a stretcher. Tom hovered over them, wringing his hands and babbling about a possible allergic reaction, a stroke, anything but the truth.
He wouldn't look at me. He couldn't.
As they wheeled his mother out of our apartment, one of the paramedics turned to me. "Are you coming to the hospital?" he asked. I looked at Tom, who was already grabbing his keys, his face a mess of performative worry. "Of course," I said smoothly. I wouldn't dream of leaving him to go through this alone. I needed to see this through. I needed to know what they had used. And I needed to make sure my story was the one that stuck. At the hospital, the hours crawled by in a blur of antiseptic smells and hushed conversations. Tom paced the waiting room floor like a caged animal. He kept shooting me looks, a mixture of fear and accusation. He wanted to talk, I could tell. He wanted to scream at me, to ask me how I knew, how I could do what I did. But we were in public. We had an audience of worried families and tired nurses. So he stayed silent, his rage and terror simmering just beneath the surface. I sat perfectly still, scrolling through my phone as if I had not a care in the world. Inside, my mind was racing. I had to get ahead of this. I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what was in that coffee, and I needed to find it before he had a chance to destroy the evidence. A doctor finally came out to speak to us. He had a kind, tired face. "We're running some tests," he said, looking from me to Tom. "Her initial blood work shows a high level of a benzodiazepine, a powerful sedative. Was she prescribed anything like that?" Tom shook his head numbly. "No, nothing," he mumbled. "She has high blood pressure. That's all." The doctor's eyes lingered on me for a moment. "She also mentioned a strange taste in her coffee right before she lost consciousness. We've taken a sample for toxicology, but that will take some time." I met the doctor's gaze without flinching. "That's so strange," I said, my voice filled with practiced innocence. "Tom made the coffee this morning. It tasted fine to me." I saw Tom flinch out of the corner of my eye. The doctor nodded, made a note on his chart, and told us they would keep Diane for observation. He suggested we go home and get some rest. The car ride home was silent and suffocating. The tension was so thick I could barely breathe. Tom drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. The moment we walked through the door of our apartment, the silence shattered. "What did you do?" he hissed, grabbing my arm. His fingers dug into my skin. I pulled away from him, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. "I did nothing," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You, on the other hand, have some explaining to do." His face contorted with rage. "You switched the cups." "I saw you," he yelled. "You poisoned my mother. This is it. The confrontation begins." I feel a strange calm settle over me. "Your mother is not poisoned," I replied coolly. "She's sedated. Just like you wanted me to be." His jaw dropped. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. "Oh, I think you do," I said, taking a step closer to him. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard anger. "Let's talk about the bitter almonds, Tom. Let's talk about the special ingredient you put in my coffee this morning." He took a step back, his bravado crumbling. "It wasn't poison," he whispered, his voice cracking. "It was just something to help you relax. You've been so stressed lately, so on edge. Relax." I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. You call drugging me helping me relax? I let out a harsh laugh. It was a sound I didn't recognize. You and your mother weren't trying to help me. You were trying to silence me. You were trying to get my inheritance. The color drained from his face completely. He looked like a ghost. No, he said, shaking his head. No, Lena, it wasn't like that. We were just worried about you. Your behavior has been so erratic. My behavior? I shot back. My behavior has been a direct reaction to the constant pressure and manipulation from you and your mother. You've been gaslighting me for months, trying to make me think I'm crazy. He flinched as if I had slapped him. That's not true, he insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. We love you. You have a very strange way of showing it, I said. I walked past him, towards the bedroom. I know you have the rest of it, Tom. Whatever it is you put in that coffee. And I'm going to find it. And when I do, I'm going to the police. I felt a surge of power. I had him. He was trapped in his own web of lies. I went straight to our bedroom. I knew I didn't have much time. I had to find the source of the drug before he could dispose of it. My first instinct was his sock drawer. It was his go-to hiding spot for things he didn't want me to find, like the credit card bills with his secret purchases or the occasional pack of cigarettes he thought I didn't know about. I pulled the drawer open, my hands sifting through rolled-up pairs of socks. And there it was. Tucked away in a corner, hidden inside a thick wool sock, was a small, unlabeled vial filled with a clear liquid. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. The proof. I quickly snapped a picture of it with my phone, making sure the location and the surrounding socks were visible. Then I slipped the vial into my pocket. I would need this later. I continued my search, my mind working furiously. A vial was good, but it wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed to understand the scope of their plan. I moved to his laptop, which was sitting on his nightstand. It was password protected, of course. But after 5 years of marriage, I knew all his secrets. I typed in the name of his childhood dog. It worked. I opened his web browser. The search history was a roadmap to his guilty conscience. Odorless, tasteless sedatives, side effects of high-dose benzodiazepines, how to manage a hysterical wife, involuntary psychiatric hold. My blood ran cold. They weren't just trying to drug me for a day. They were planning to have me committed. They were building a case to prove I was mentally unstable, all so they could get their hands on my money. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The man I had shared my bed with, the man I had promised to love and cherish, had been plotting my downfall with his mother. The betrayal was so profound, it felt like a physical blow. I took a deep breath, pushing the pain down. I couldn't fall apart now. I had to be smart. I had to be strategic. I took pictures of the screen, documenting every single search query. Then I started digging through his emails. Most of it was junk, work correspondence bills. But then I found a separate folder, one I had never seen before. It was labeled Family Matters. My heart pounded as I clicked on it. And there they were. A string of emails between Tom and Diane, going back months. They were meticulous, detailed, and utterly damning. She's refusing to be reasonable about the money. One of Tom's emails read. She's becoming paranoid and hostile. Diane's reply was chilling. We knew this might happen, my baby boy. We need to be prepared to take more drastic measures for her own good. I've spoken to our lawyer, Mr. Peterson. He says if she is deemed mentally unfit, you, as her husband, would have full control of her finances. Another email from Tom, just a week ago. I found something online. It's a powerful sedative. The website says it can cause confusion and memory loss. Maybe if we can just calm her down for a few days, she'll come to her senses. Diane's response. Be careful, my love. We don't want to hurt her. We just want to help her. And help ourselves in the process. A little peace and quiet is all she needs. I had to stop reading. I felt like I was going to be sick. This was premeditated. They had a lawyer involved. They had a plan. This wasn't just about a family dispute over money. This was a conspiracy to steal my life from me. I methodically took pictures of every single email. I forwarded the entire chain to a new email address I created on the spot, and then I sent a copy to my best friend, Sarah. I attached a simple message. If anything happens to me, this is why. I love you. I felt a grim satisfaction as I hit send. The evidence was safe. Now they couldn't erase it. They couldn't deny it. I had them. I closed the laptop and stood up, the vial heavy in my pocket. I walked back out into the living room. Tom was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. He looked up as I entered, his face pale and drawn. He looked pathetic. "Find what you were looking for?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I just looked at him, my silence more damning than any accusation. I let him stew in it for a long moment. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he had done. "I found everything," I finally said, my voice devoid of emotion. "The vial, the browser history, the emails between you and your mother." I saw the last bit of hope drain from his eyes. He knew he was caught. There was no way to lie his way out of this one. "Lena, please," he begged, getting up from the couch and taking a step towards me. "You have to understand. I was desperate. Mom's business is failing, and you are being so stubborn about the money." "Stubborn?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You call it stubborn?" "I call it protecting myself from my greedy, manipulative husband and his monstrous mother." He flinched. "Don't talk about my mother like that," he said, a flash of his old defensiveness returning. "Your mother," I said, my voice dangerously low, "is the one who put you up to this. She has been poisoning our marriage from the very beginning. And now, she has literally tried to poison me." "It wasn't poison," he insisted, his voice cracking. "I told you. It was just a sedative. A sedative you were going to use to have me committed, so you could steal my inheritance." I screamed, the full force of my rage finally breaking through my carefully constructed calm. "Do you have any idea how insane you sound right now?" He stared at me, his mouth agape. He had no defense. He had no excuse. He just stood there, a pathetic monument to his own weakness and greed. "I'm leaving, Tom," I said, the words feeling solid and real in my mouth. "I'm going to a hotel tonight. And tomorrow I'm calling a lawyer," his eyes filled with tears. "No," he whispered. "Lena, don't.
We can fix this.
I'll talk to my mother. I'll tell her to back off." I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "A little late for that, don't you think?" I said. "You made your choice. You chose her. Now you get to live with the consequences." I walked towards the door, grabbing my purse and keys from the table. "Don't try to follow me," I warned him. "And don't even think about destroying any of that evidence. I have copies of everything. And my friend Sarah has them too." He just stood there in the middle of the living room, a broken man in a broken home. As I walked out the door, I didn't feel sadness or regret. I just felt a profound sense of relief. I was free. The first step had been taken. I called Sarah from the hotel room. She picked up on the first ring.
"Lena?"
"Oh my God, I got your email. Are you okay? Where are you?" Her voice was frantic with worry. "I'm fine," I said, surprised to find that it was true. "I'm at a hotel downtown." "I left him." "Good," she said, her voice fierce. "You stay there. I'm coming to get you." "You can stay with me." "No, Sarah, it's okay," I said. "I need to do this on my own. But can you do something for me?" "Anything," she said without hesitation. "I sent you those emails for a reason," I explained. "I need you to be my witness. I need you to hold on to that evidence for me. Just in case." "Of course," she said. "I've already saved them to a hard drive and put it in my safe. They're not getting away with this, Lena. We're not going to let them." Talking to her, hearing the righteous anger in her voice, solidified my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every woman who had ever been made to feel small, crazy, or difficult by a man and his mother. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I found her online. Her name was Jessica, and her website said she specialized in high-conflict divorces. When I told her my story, she was silent for a long moment. "I've seen a lot of things in my 20 years of practice," she finally said, her voice grim. "But this is next level. Are you safe right now?" "Yes," I said. "I'm at a hotel. He doesn't know where." "Good," she said. "Here's what we're going to do. First, I'm filing for an emergency protective order. That will keep him away from you. Second, we are going to use the evidence you have to take him and his mother to the cleaners. This isn't just grounds for divorce, Lena. This is criminal. The word criminal hung in the air. It was one thing to think it, another to hear it from a lawyer. But she was right. They had crossed a line. A big one. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal paperwork and emotional exhaustion. Jessica was a force of nature. She filed the protective order, which was granted immediately. Tom was served with divorce papers and a restraining order at his mother's house, where he had apparently gone to hide. Diane was released from the hospital after 2 days, with the official diagnosis being an adverse reaction to an unknown substance. The toxicology report was inconclusive, thanks to the hospital's inability to test for the specific designer sedative Tom had bought online. It didn't matter. I had the vial. I had the emails. I had the truth. My phone rang constantly. It was Tom calling from blocked numbers. He left rambling, tearful voicemails, begging me to talk to him, telling me he loved me, that he had made a terrible mistake. He sounded like a child who had been caught and was now trying every trick in the book to avoid punishment. I didn't answer. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I just deleted them. Then came the calls from his side of the family. His aunt, his cousins, even his father, who had been a silent, passive presence in their family for years. They had all heard Diane's version of the story. Apparently, I was the one who was unstable. I had tried to poison her in a fit of jealous rage, and now I was trying to ruin Tom's life out of spite. The narrative they had been building for months was now being deployed in full force. I had a particularly nasty call with Tom's aunt, a woman who had always treated me with a kind of condescending pity. "Lena, dear," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "I know you're not well, but this has gone too far. You need to get help. For your own good. I'm not the one who needs help," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Maybe you should ask Diane and Tom about what was really in that coffee. Diane is a victim here," she shrieked. "You are a cruel, ungrateful girl. After everything she's done for you." "What exactly has she done for me?" I asked. "Besides try to have me drugged and committed?" There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I hung up. I knew it was pointless to argue. They had chosen their side. They would believe what they wanted to believe. But their opinions didn't matter anymore. The only opinion that mattered was that of the legal system. The one person I did want to talk to was Chloe, Tom's younger sister. She had always been the sanest member of that family. She lived in a different city and kept a healthy distance from Diane's drama. We weren't close, but we had always been friendly. I hesitated for a long time before calling her. I didn't know what she had been told or what she would believe. But I had to try. She answered on the second ring. "Lena," she said, her voice cautious. "Hi, Chloe," I said. "I'm sure you've heard some crazy things in the last few days," she sighed. "That's an understatement," she said. "Mom is on a rampage. She's calling everyone we know, telling them you're a monster. Tom is a wreck. He's not saying anything, just hiding in his old bedroom." "I see," I said, my heart sinking a little. "So you believe them?" "No," she said, and the relief that washed over me was so intense I had to sit down. "No, I don't. I've known my mother my whole life. I know what she's capable of. And I've seen the way she's treated you for years. I never said anything, and I'm so sorry for that. But I never believed her stories about you being difficult or unstable." Tears pricked at my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. "That means more than you know. So, what really happened, Lena?" she asked. "I want to hear it from you," so I told her. Everything. The coffee, the smell, the switch, the vial, the browser history, the emails. I told her about their plan to have me committed, about the inheritance, about the lawyer. When I was finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Oh my God," she finally said, her voice filled with horror. "I knew it was bad. I didn't know it was that bad. They could have killed you. Or worse," I said. "They could have stolen my mind, my freedom, my life. And they would have gotten away with it, telling everyone they were just trying to help." "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm divorcing him," I said. And I'm making sure they can't do this to anyone ever again. There was another pause. Good, she said, her voice firm. You do that. And if you need anything at all, you call me. If you need a witness, if you need someone to testify to my mother's character, I'll be there. We talked for a little while longer, and when we hung up, I felt a little bit lighter. I wasn't completely alone in this. I had an ally in the enemy camp. My lawyer, Jessica, was thrilled about Chloe. A sympathetic family member is worth their weight in gold, she told me during our next meeting. She can corroborate the pattern of abuse and manipulation. We were meeting to discuss strategy. The divorce was proceeding, but Jessica wanted to talk about the criminal aspect. We have enough to go to the police, she said, laying out the evidence on her conference table. The pictures of the vial, the printouts of the emails, a sworn affidavit from Sarah. This is a conspiracy to commit fraud, at the very least. Possibly attempted assault. With the right prosecutor, they could be facing jail time. I stared at the evidence. It was all so cold and clinical. It was hard to believe this was my life. Do you want to press charges? Jessica asked, her eyes searching mine. It's your call. It will get messy. The press might get involved. Your name, their names, it will all be public. I thought about it for a long moment. I thought about the humiliation, the public scrutiny. I thought about having to face them in a courtroom, having to tell my story over and over again. But then I thought about what they had tried to do to me. The sheer arrogance of it. The cruelty. They thought they could get away with it. They thought I was weak. They thought I would just lie down and let them roll over me. Yes, I said, my voice clear and strong. I want to press charges. I want them to be held accountable for what they did. Jessica smiled, a thin, predatory smile. Good, she said. I was hoping you'd say that. Let's go burn their world down. The first step was giving a formal statement to the police. I spent hours with a detective, a woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. I told her everything from the beginning. I showed her the emails, the pictures, the vial itself, which I had carefully preserved in a plastic bag. She listened patiently, taking copious notes. When I was done, she looked me in the eye. I believe you, she said simply. And I'm very sorry this happened to you. We're going to take this very seriously. 2 days later, Detective Miller called me. We executed a search warrant on your husband's and mother-in-law's residences this morning, she said. We found the laptop. The emails you referenced were deleted, but our forensics team is confident they can be recovered. We also found several other vials of the same sedative in Diane's medicine cabinet, hidden in a bottle of aspirin. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was even more premeditated than I had imagined. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you for believing me. The news of the search warrant and the police investigation sent shockwaves through Tom's family. The narrative of poor, unstable Lena quickly fell apart when faced with the reality of a police raid. The phone calls stopped. The flying monkeys retreated. Suddenly, no one wanted to be associated with Tom and Diane. They were on their own. The divorce proceedings were a joke. With the mountain of evidence against him, Tom had no leverage. He tried to fight it at first. His lawyer, the same Mr. Peterson who had advised Diane on how to have me committed, tried to argue that the emails were taken out of context, that it was all a big misunderstanding. Jessica just laughed at him. Save it for the criminal trial, she told him. In the end, Tom caved. He agreed to all of my terms. I got the apartment, the car, and a significant portion of our shared assets. More importantly, I got the rest of my inheritance, which he had been trying so desperately to steal. I was free financially and emotionally. But it wasn't over. Not yet. There was still the criminal case. The district attorney's office decided to press charges against both Tom and Diane. Conspiracy to commit assault, fraud, and a litany of other charges. Their world, which had been built on a foundation of lies and manipulation, was crumbling around them. And I was the one who had kicked out the first brick. The day of their arraignment, I went to the courthouse. I didn't have to be there, but I wanted to see them. I wanted to see their faces. I sat in the back of the courtroom, wearing sunglasses and a hat, hoping no one would recognize me. They were brought in handcuffs. Diane looked old and frail, her carefully coiffed hair a mess, her designer clothes rumpled. She looked terrified. Tom just looked empty. He stared straight ahead, his face a blank mask. When they read the charges, he didn't even flinch. It was as if he had already accepted his fate. The trial was scheduled for 6 months later. In that time, I started to rebuild my life. I found a new apartment, a bright, airy space that was all mine. I decorated it exactly how I wanted, with no one to tell me my taste was too modern or too colorful. I started seeing a therapist who helped me work through the trauma and the betrayal. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my marriage. I started to feel like myself again. Sarah was my rock through it all. She was there for every late-night phone call, every tearful breakdown, every small victory. "I'm so proud of you," she told me one night as we sat on my new balcony, drinking wine. "You could have just run away.
But you stayed and you fought."
You're a warrior." I didn't feel like a warrior. I just felt like a survivor. As the trial date approached, I got a call from the district attorney's office. "Tom's lawyer has reached out," the ADA told me. "He's willing to testify against his mother in exchange for a plea deal." I wasn't surprised. It was a classic Tom move. When backed into a corner, save yourself. Throw the person you claim to love under the bus. In this case, it was his mother. "What kind of deal?" I asked. "Probation, community service, and he has to pay restitution," the ADA said. Diane, on the other hand, would be facing significant jail time. "We have a much stronger case against her with his testimony." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to see Tom go to jail. He was just as guilty as she was. He was the one who had prepared the coffee. He was the one who had stood by and let it happen.
But another part of me was just tired. I was tired of fighting.
I was tired of letting them take up so much space in my head. I wanted it to be over. "Okay," I said. "Let him take the deal. But I want to face her in court. I want her to see me when she's sentenced." The trial was shorter than I expected. With Tom's testimony, the case against Diane was ironclad. He told the jury everything. He painted a picture of a manipulative, controlling mother who had convinced him that his wife was mentally unstable and that they needed to intervene for her own good. He cried on the stand, big, fat, crocodile tears. He said he was sorry, that he had been weak, that he had never meant for any of this to happen. I watched him from the gallery, and I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just a vast, empty space where my love for him used to be. Chloe also testified. She told the court about her mother's lifelong pattern of manipulation and her history of turning the family against anyone who displeased her. Her testimony was calm, factual, and devastating. When it was my turn to take the stand, I was nervous. But as I sat there, looking out at the jury, at the judge, at Diane sitting at the defendant's table, a strange sense of calm came over me. I just told the truth. I told them about the coffee. I told them about the smell of bitter almonds. I told them about the fear I felt in that moment and the cold resolve that followed. I told them about the emails, about the plan to have me committed, about the inheritance. I looked directly at Diane as I spoke. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She just stared down at her hands, a small, pathetic old woman who had tried to destroy my life and failed. The jury was out for less than an hour. They found her guilty on all counts. At the sentencing, I was allowed to give a victim impact statement. I stood at the podium, my hands shaking slightly, and I looked right at Diane. "You didn't just try to steal my money," I said, my voice ringing out in the silent courtroom. "You tried to steal my sanity. You tried to steal my voice. You tried to erase me. You thought I was weak. You thought I would break. But you were wrong. I am stronger than you could ever imagine. And I am not your victim. I am a survivor." The judge sentenced her to 10 years in prison. As they led her away in handcuffs, she finally looked at me. Her eyes were filled with a hatred so pure, it was almost beautiful. I just smiled. After the trial, I went out for a celebratory dinner with Sarah, Chloe, and my lawyer, Jessica. We raised our glasses of champagne. "To new beginnings," Jessica said. And to burning it all down, Sarah added with a grin. Chloe looked at me, her eyes shining with tears.
I'm so sorry, Lena, she said.
For everything. It wasn't your fault, I told her. You were the only one who was brave enough to stand up to her. We stayed at the restaurant for hours, talking and laughing. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly happy. The weight that I had been carrying for years was finally gone. Tom got his deal. Probation, a hefty fine, and 500 hours of community service. I saw him once, a few months later. He was picking up trash on the side of the highway, wearing a bright orange vest. He looked thin and tired. He didn't see me. I just drove past, and I didn't look back. I heard through Chloe that he was living in his mother's house, which was in foreclosure. He couldn't find a job. The story had made the local news, and no one wanted to hire the man who had tried to drug his wife for her inheritance. He and his mother had gotten what they wanted. They were together, just the two of them, in their crumbling kingdom of lies. My life, on the other hand, was just beginning. I went back to school and got my master's degree. I started my own business, a small consulting firm that quickly became successful. I traveled. I made new friends. I learned to trust myself again. I even started dating, cautiously at first. I met a man, a kind, gentle man with a warm smile and honest eyes. A man who makes his own coffee and lets me make mine. A man who loves me for who I am, not for what I have. It's a quiet life, a peaceful life. Sometimes, when I'm sitting on my balcony, watching the sunset, I think about that morning. I think about the smell of bitter almonds. And I think about the woman I was, the woman who was afraid to speak up, the woman who just wanted to keep the peace. I am not that woman anymore. That woman is gone. And in her place is someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who knows that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to switch the cups. They wanted to make me small, to make me disappear. But in the end, they were the ones who vanished, trapped together in the mess they had made. And I finally learned what it feels like to be free.